Just as the sun was rising over the kingdom of Wagadoo, the screams of a woman in labor filled the palace. Queen Nuru was giving birth, but when the child was finally delivered, the room fell silent. The baby did not cry. The midwife repeatedly patted the infant's back, but the child remained completely mute. Her eyes were open and perfectly still, staring blankly ahead with an innocent, unblinking look. Her tiny hands and body moved normally, but she showed no reaction to touch or pain. At first, the panicked midwife thought the child was completely mute and blind. But as they cleaned her up, without anyone touching her, the baby finally made a soft, clicking sound. Not a cry, but a strange rhythmic noise. The queen burst into tears when the healers confirmed her newborn princess was completely blind in the daylight and seemingly immune to physical pain. They named her Nailah. Despite her condition, Nailah was the absolute center of the royal family's love. Her father, the king, treated her like a fragile egg. Her older brother, the crown prince, became her constant shadow and keeper, and Queen Nuru cherished her above all else. 2 full moons after her birth, the mystery of Nailah deepened. The queen briefly left the royal nursery. When she returned, she froze in the doorway, for massive fruit bats were perched directly on the bed where little Nailah lay. The infant princess was happily reaching out, playing with the resting creatures. Queen Nuru screamed, waving her hands and chasing the bats out the open window. But the incident kept repeating. Whenever the palace maidens or the queen looked away, the bats would return to sit with the child. Even when the heavy wooden windows were barred shut, they would mysteriously push open. Disturbed, Queen Nuru secretly consulted the high priestess. The priestess revealed that Nailah was not an ordinary child. Her birth defied the natural balance. She was a merge of human blood and an ancient bat spirit. The priestess warned the queen that chasing the bats away was useless. They recognized the child as their own kind and would always return. From that day on, the queen kept the secret and stopped chasing the winged visitors away. As Nailah entered her toddler years, the queen discovered the true extent of her daughter's condition. Late one night, the palace was pitch black. A highly venomous viper had slithered into the royal nursery. Queen Nuru entered the room with a dim candle, dropping it in pure terror when she saw the snake rising beside the bed. The flame went out, plunging the room into absolute darkness. But toddler Nailah was already sitting up. In the pitch black, Nailah's eyes locked onto the snake. She tracked its rapid, silent movements perfectly. Without making a sound, Nailah raised her small finger and pointed directly at the snake's head in the dark, holding her hand perfectly still so the rushing guards knew exactly where to strike. The queen realized the truth. Her daughter was blind in the sun, but possessed a supernatural sight that pierced the darkest night. Nailah grew into a beautiful young princess. During the day, she navigated the palace by touch and sound. But once the sun completely set, her sight restored, allowing her to see a man perfectly from miles away in the dead of night. She had few human friends besides her brother, preferring to sleep during the day and roam the kingdom at night with the bats that constantly followed her. Soon, the entire kingdom respected her abilities after 2 major events. First, a young village boy wandered off and fell into a deep, pitch-black ravine. Search parties with torches could not find him. Nailah arrived, stood perfectly still at the edge of the absolute darkness, and used her night sight to perfectly guide the ropes down to the exact hidden ledge where the boy was trapped. Soon after, she saved the life of Chief Kazi. The chief was walking through the unlit palace gardens late at night. Nailah, sitting quietly on a dark balcony far away, spotted an armed assassin hiding in the thick canopy above the chief. She threw a single stone in the dark, striking the exact branch and exposing the assassin before he could drop down. Her night sight became a revered legend in Wagadoo. But everything changed on the morning she was about to transition into an adult. The royal family gathered in the brightly lit dining hall for a morning feast. Midway through the meal, the king suddenly choked. He violently collapsed to the stone floor, thick white foam pouring from his mouth. The servants panicked, rushing to get the royal healer. But when the healer dropped to the king's side, His grim expression said it all. The king was dead. Instantly, the king's brother, Nailah's uncle Zubair, drew his heavy sword. He commanded the palace guards, who were secretly loyal to him, to seize the queen and her children. Zubair had planned this betrayal for years, hiding his deep envy behind a fake smile. He had poisoned his own brother, and now he intended to eliminate the entire bloodline. Queen Nuru realized the trap. She grabbed a weapon and tried to fight alongside the few loyal guards who stood by her. But Zubair's forces easily overpowered them. Zubair stepped forward and swiftly struck Queen Nuru down with his own blade, killing her right in front of Nailah and the prince. Because the room was flooded with bright morning sunlight, Nailah was completely blind. She could not see the betrayal. She could only hear the horrific sounds of the slaughter, the clash of steel, and the sudden, terrifying silence of her mother. Her brother, the prince, drew his blade. He was not a fully trained combatant, but his courage was absolute. He charged Zubair's elite guards, but was instantly disarmed and pressed face down onto the hard floor. Struggling under the guards, the prince screamed, "Nailah, run!" Trapped on the top floor of the royal chamber, completely unseeing and highly confused, Nailah listened to the heavy footsteps of Zubair's guards marching toward her. Terrified, she backed away. With nowhere left to run, Nailah stepped backward over the ledge and fell blindly from the high tower balcony. But she did not hit the ground. A massive, chaotic swarm of giant fruit bats erupted from the palace eaves. Thousands of them swarmed directly beneath her, violently flapping their wings to break her fall. They supported her weight, carrying her gently but rapidly away from the palace and dropping her safely deep into the distant woods. Zubair's warriors rushed to the forest to hunt her down, but they found absolutely no trace of the blind princess. When the guards reported what had happened, Uncle Zubair refused to believe a swarm of bats had carried a human away. He dismissed it as a cowardly excuse, convinced that the blind girl had simply perished in the fall. Still in a state of pure panic, Nailah trusted the chaotic swarm of bats. They had been by her side since the day she was born, and they had just saved her life. The winged swarm flew low through the dense woods, guiding the young princess to a massive, hidden fissure at the base of the echoing mountains. As she stepped inside, the sunlight vanished, and her supernatural night sight instantly took over. She could see the deep, jagged walls of the cavern perfectly. The bats led her down a spiraling descent until the narrow tunnel opened into a colossal underground chamber. There, standing perfectly still in the cavern, was an ancient secret society of elite blind warriors. They did not raise weapons. They did not ask her name. As Nailah stepped onto the cavern floor, the entire society silently dropped to their knees and bowed to her. An echoing whisper filled the cave. "The prophecy is happening." Nailah sat heavily on a stone slab, her mind racing. Even though she hadn't seen the slaughter in the sunlit dining hall, her other senses had recorded everything. She replayed her mother's sudden, silent drop. She heard her brother's desperate, pinned scream telling her to run. The heavy realization hit her like a stone. Her family was dead, and her brother was captured. She was completely alone. But as she looked at the kneeling warriors, she realized she had a new family. They treated her with absolute reverence. They didn't ask what had happened. Their silence confirmed they already knew the tragedy that had struck the palace above. They simply told her she needed to prepare. Curious, Nailah asked about the prophecy. The oldest among them, a blind master named Elder Batty, stepped forward and told her the legend of Lord Orimba. Centuries ago, Orimba was a mortal resistance warrior fighting for a helpless village constantly tormented by a dominating empire. After a brutal massacre of his people, Orimba walked into the deep forest and made a permanent deal with a powerful, ancient spirit. He was reborn as a demigod, a protector possessing the terrifying abilities of the bat. Orimba guarded the innocent until a bitter betrayal forced him to vanish back into the shadows. But the ancient texts foretold that Orimba's spirit would eventually be reborn in human form, as a woman. Elder Batty pointed a scarred finger at Nailah. They had known since the day she was born. She was the reincarnation of Lord Orimba. Nailah sat completely speechless, staring at the blind master in the dark. The next day, her brutal physical training began. The masters did not teach her how to swing a sword with rage. They taught her absolute physical stillness. Nailah learned to suppress her heartbeat and quiet her lungs. For weeks, she practiced hanging completely upside down from the cavern ceilings, gripping the jagged stalactites with her bare feet and remaining perfectly frozen for hours, perfectly mimicking the resting bats above her. Her greatest struggle was fighting in the daylight. Because the sun rendered her completely blind, Elder Batty forced her to fight blindfolded near the cavern entrances where the light bled in. At first, she took heavy beatings, but she adapted faster than any warrior before her. She learned to rapidly click her tongue, using the bouncing echoes to perfectly visualize the physical layout of the cave and the incoming strikes of her masters. She learned to fight flawlessly without her eyes. Through her intense focus, Nailah unlocked her dormant powers. She discovered she could project a silent, telepathic command, taking full control of the millions of massive cave bats and turning the chaotic swarm into a synchronized, flying army. Years passed in the dark. Nailah grew from a frightened, blind princess into a lethal, silent warrior. To complete her transformation, she forged her signature weapons. A wicked, S-shaped double iron blade with a tightly wrapped purple grip, paired with a set of smaller, razor-sharp tungsten throwing blades designed to pierce armor in complete silence. On the final day of her training, Elder Batty brought her to the deepest vault of the cavern. He presented her with an ancient, sacred gift preserved for centuries before her birth, the coat of Lord Orimba. It was a massive, heavy cloak stitched entirely from the leathery hides of deceased giant bats, designed to absorb sound and allow the wearer to glide silently from high ledges. As Nailah draped the heavy, dark cloak over her shoulders, Elder Batty bowed his head. "You are ready," he whispered. The training in the echoing mountains took years. By the time Nailah stepped out of the caverns, she was no longer a frightened, blind girl. She was a lethal, fully realized warrior. She returned to Wagadoo to find her kingdom broken. Uncle Zubair ruled with an iron fist. He had tripled the kingdom's tribute, demanding impossible portions of the villagers' grain harvests and livestock, taking far more than the land could provide. Worse, Zubair's greed had turned to pure evil. Innocent villagers were constantly accused of false crimes, captured by the elite guard, and never seen again. Zubair was secretly selling his own people to foreign warlords as slaves for gold. Starving and terrified, the people of Wagadoo prayed desperately to the gods of their land for deliverance. Unknown to them, their prayers were already standing at the edge of the forest. Zubair kept Nailah's brother locked deep inside the pitch-black palace dungeons, keeping the true heir alive only as a secret, broken trophy of his conquest. Late at night, Nailah made her move. Wearing the heavy coat of Lord Orimba, she stepped off the high palace walls and glided silently across the courtyard, landing in the shadows without making a single sound. Relying completely on her supernatural night vision and the rapid, silent clicks of her tongue, she navigated the underground dungeons. She executed her strikes with terrifying precision. She would drop a guard, press her back against the cold stone wall, and maintain absolute physical stillness until the next patrol walked by. Silently, without the palace even realizing it was under attack, she cleared the entire dungeon corridor. Nailah reached the deepest cell and broke open the heavy iron door. Inside, she found her brother sitting in the pitch black. Recognizing her instantly, he stood up. The two siblings embraced in the darkness, sharing quiet tears of joy after years of suffering. But their soft sobbing echoed down the stone hall. A returning guard rounded the corner, spotted the bodies of his comrades lying perfectly still on the floor, and instantly shouted the alarm. Nailah reacted in a fraction of a second, hurling one of her throwing blades through the dark and silencing the guard instantly. But it was too late. The heavy pounding of iron boots echoed from the stairs. Dozens of elite guards rushed down into the dungeon, holding blazing torches that flooded the corridor with harsh light. From the back of the armored troops, Uncle Zubair's furious voice echoed off the walls, screaming the order to kill them both. Standing in the sudden, blinding light, Nailah realized she could not fight an entire armed battalion and guarantee her brother's safety at the same time. She reached into her belt and slammed an ashen spore pouch into the stone floor. A thick, blinding cloud of gray dust violently erupted, engulfing the front line of soldiers. In the same breath, Nailah sent out a silent, telepathic command. A massive, chaotic swarm of giant fruit bats flooded down the dungeon stairwell. Thousands of massive wings battered the elite guards. The corridor descended into absolute chaos. Blinded by the ash and swarmed by the aggressive beasts, Zubair's warriors panicked, swinging their heavy swords wildly and colliding with each other in the dark. Using the perfect distraction, Nailah grabbed her brother's arm. They moved rapidly through the chaos. Two stubborn elite guards broke through the swarm to block the exit, but Nailah struck them down in two swift, fluid motions without breaking her stride. With her brother safely behind her, they burst out of the dungeon and escaped over the walls. Furious, Zubair rallied his remaining men and chased them relentlessly into the deep forest. The soldiers hunted with torches and tracking dogs, determined to finish the bloodline. But when they reached the tree line, the tracks simply vanished. There was no trace of the siblings. Just like the day she fell from the balcony years ago, the blind princess had completely disappeared into the night. When Nailah finally brought her brother deep into the hidden caverns of the echoing mountains, the young prince was amazed by the silent, underground world she had survived in for years. Safe in the cold dark, he broke down. He shared the harrowing stories of the torture and starvation he had endured in the lightless dungeon. He told her of the cries of their people, the innocent villagers sold away, and the crushing hardship brought on by Uncle Zubair's cruel rule. Hearing this, Nailah's heart melted. She gently asked her brother to explain exactly what happened on the day the palace fell. The prince recounted the horror, how Zubair had poisoned their father's cup with a fake smile, and how their mother had fought to her last breath. Sitting on the cold stone floor, the siblings wept together, finally able to mourn the parents they had lost so long ago. As the tears dried, Nailah's sorrow hardened. She had made up her mind. She would set the kingdom free from her evil uncle's hands. Nailah began with a trap. She sent a message directly to the palace, openly challenging her uncle and luring him into the ancient, abandoned catacombs beneath the city. Zubair was deeply arrogant, which Nailah knew perfectly well. He took the bait, but he was also cunning. Anticipating that the catacombs might be a death trap, the king divided his forces. He kept half of his army stationed at the palace on high alert and sent his most elite warriors to the catacombs in the broad daylight, giving them strict orders not to return without Nailah's head. The elite warriors descended into the earth. Knowing the dangers that lay ahead, they lit heavy, pitch-soaked torches, walking slowly and tightly together as they pushed deeper into the underground ruins. High above them, Nailah was hiding in the shadows of the ceiling, hanging in absolute physical stillness. As the men walked beneath her, she silently dropped from the stone archway. Without making a single sound, she moved through the formation, extinguishing their torches one by one. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The visual plunged into pure terror for the soldiers as the tunnel was swallowed by absolute darkness. Panic erupted. The elite guards swung their heavy blades wildly, cutting only the empty air. Nailah stood completely still and invisible in the center of the chaos. Relying entirely on her perfect night vision, she tracked their frantic movements. She sidestepped a wild swing, driving her obsidian blade into the gaps of their armor. She swept their legs, disarming them before they even knew she was standing right beside them. Brutal screams of pain and fear echoed off the ancient walls, followed by the heavy thud of falling bodies. And then the cavern went completely silent. Every single man was down. That night, back at the palace, Uncle Zubair's paranoia had reached its peak. Blazing torches flickered at every angle of the palace, illuminating the massive courtyard and the surrounding fields. Thousands of heavily armed soldiers stood on guard. The king paced the upper tower balcony, restless and unable to sleep. His elite warriors had not returned from the catacombs. He already assumed they were all dead, and the attack was coming. Suddenly, A wave of fear gripped the minds of the standing army. In one synchronized, inexplicable moment, every single light mounted on the field instantly went off. Standing in the dim light of the upper balcony, the uncle screamed out in fear, his voice cracking as he challenged Nailah to show herself and stop hiding in the shadows like a coward. She proved him wrong. Nailah stepped out from the absolute dark, standing completely still in the center of the courtyard, fully visible before the king and his thousands of elite soldiers. Zubair laughed wickedly, thinking he had successfully tricked her into the open. He waved his hand in a sharp command. Instantly, dozens of arrows flew from the upper chambers of the palace, where the king had hidden his master archers in the shadows. As the arrows rained down, Nailah sprang into motion. She launched herself backward into the air, contorting her body in a mid-air stunt, violently twisting her torso to dodge the tens of arrows that sliced through the space she had just occupied. Furious, the king ordered more to be fired. A second massive volley of arrows was unleashed from different directions at the exact same time, boxing her in. Seeing the arrows converging from all sides, Nailah did not dodge. She landed on her feet, rose sharply, and wrapped herself completely in her heavy, dark coat. The king smiled, thinking he had finally gotten her. But to his absolute shock, as the arrows struck her, they failed to pierce the magical hide. Nailah stood perfectly still, fully wrapped in the cloak, as the deadly arrows simply clattered harmlessly to the stone floor at her feet. Unknown to the king, the entire palace perimeter had already been surrounded by the secret society of blind warriors. Nailah gave a single, silent signal. In that instant, the remaining torches inside the palace walls went completely out. Total darkness consumed the stronghold. The king's soldiers screamed, running blindly and violently colliding into each other. Nailah's blind warrior clan moved like ghosts through the blackness, striking the panicked, unseeing guards down one after the other. Then came the second worst calamity. From the dark sky above, millions of massive bats struck the palace from every direction. The massive swarm descended on the courtyard, violently attacking the remaining guards. The entire palace was thrown into chaotic, screaming darkness. Up on the tower chamber, the evil king shouted desperate orders to an army that could no longer hear him. A massive swarm of bats broke off and attacked him directly. Seized by fear and pure panic, Zubair struggled blindly, swinging his arms as the bats pushed him backward toward the edge of the balcony. For a split second, the bats retreated. Zubair gasped for air, teetering on the edge. Then, with a massive, synchronized force, the swarm struck him square in the chest. The evil king stumbled backward over the stone ledge. He plummeted from the upper tower chamber, falling through the night exactly the same way the young princess had fallen years ago. But this time, there was no winged army to catch him. Not even his elite soldiers could help, as they were living their own nightmare below. Zubair hit the courtyard floor with a sickening crack. He went still instantly, his heart stopping on impact. Nailah walked calmly through the chaos to the spot where he lay. She looked down at his lifeless body, gathered the spit in her mouth, and poured it directly onto his face. Seeing their king dead, the few soldiers who survived dropped their weapons and ran away, vanishing into the dark forest, leaving thousands of their brothers laying completely still across the field. Nailah had won. When the morning sun finally rose, the dark era broke. The whole kingdom of Wagadoo spilled into the streets, jubilating and rejoicing over their liberation. With the uncle defeated, Nailah's brother ascended the throne in the bright daylight, taking his rightful place as king. But Nailah did not stay in the sunlit palace. Her place was in the dark. She returned to the shadows, becoming the silent, watchful guardian of the kingdom forever. Today, when the world hears the name Batwoman or Batman, they picture a comic book superhero leaping across the towering skyscrapers of Gotham City. They think of a billionaire in a high-tech tactical suit, using expensive gadgets, sonar lenses, and grappling hooks to fight crime. But true legends are never born from empty imagination. Long before the first comic book was ever drawn or the Hollywood movies were filmed, the true shadow of justice was already protecting the ancient kingdoms of Africa. She didn't need a billion-dollar suit designed in a modern laboratory. She wore the massive, leathery hides of the very beasts that saved her life. She didn't need electronic gadgets to see in the dark. She mastered absolute physical stillness, using the rapid clicks of her tongue and the echoes of the deep earth to navigate the pitch-black night. And she didn't need to hand her enemies over to the law. She struck from the shadows with twin obsidian blades, leaving nothing but pure terror and silence in her wake. So, the next time you see that famous bat symbol shining in the sky on your screen, ask yourself, is it just a clever Hollywood myth? Or is it the forgotten echo of Nailah, the original night walker of Wagadoo, whose ancient legend is far greater than fiction?